many of you in the business world have been on LinkedIn. And if you're like me, I tend to be in a little bit of social media, mostly podcast or mostly LinkedIn. So one of the challenges specifically with any technology is really making sure that you're using that technology to the fullest. A lot of us have fancy iPhones and fancy computers, and really what we end up doing is only using about 10% of the actual capability of the whole device. So really what we're going to hope to challenge you today with and give you some education on is how you can use social media in your business. And we're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and maybe some other platforms. But for right now, Chris, I just want to share what we're talking about today is this. I'll show my screen real quick. But basically, we wrote a blog on social media tips for the professional platform. So we're just going to kind of go through that today and just talk about how that works. And so the first thing, Chris, is LinkedIn marketing. Obviously, if you're a business professional, you have a profile. And for many of us, we kind of stop there. So
Sure.
what are some tips that you can share with the audience on really optimizing, your name, your brand, your company, your services? I know that in the blog, you talk about the who, what, why, and how. So why don't we just start with the who?
Yep. Well, I think that one of the things that you should know is that going into this process, that LinkedIn has changed probably more in the last 3 years since it's been bought by Microsoft than it has in all of the years prior to that. They're constantly moving the goalposts and things like that. And so what happens, I find a lot of people either get intimidated by it or they set it and forget it, which basically means they set up their profile years ago and then they haven't returned to use it as a platform that they use on a regular basis. Now, from my vantage point, if I invented a platform that had all the potential business, like I have so many companies out there that says, hey, I need to buy a list. And I'm like, well, why do you need to do that? It's like, well, I need to make sure that I can get right in front of the right audience. So it's like,
Right.
If you look at every social media platform, LinkedIn is the only one out there that literally has the names and the titles of the people you're trying to reach. So the question is, why do you abandon it so early? And I think it's because we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep.
So that's the who. And then within the who, the blog talks about current clients, network partners, and potential clients. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yep. Well, I think that the first thing you want to do is that when you have developed your own clientele, keeping your name in front of them and reestablishing yourself as a thought leader is going to be essential. And so, I'm going to recommend they do that through as many platforms as possible, including email and things like that. But LinkedIn is one of those ones that I think is going to be really important because, they bought from you for one reason, but they're going to stay with you for other reasons. And establishing yourself as a thought leader is going to be really important for that.
Yeah. All right. So that's a really good point. And can you just elaborate on ways to establish yourself as a thought leader on social media?
Well, one of the reasons why let's try to figure out why social media works so effectively. For one, obviously, imagine it being like the biggest mall in the world. And so you have tons and tons of people that are there. It's like, would you open up a shop in the biggest mall in the world if it was free?
Yes.
Yes. Right. The other thing you need to know is that Google makes its money by advertising. They make their money. They make better money when they advertise more effectively to their target audience. So why is social media so effective? Well, it spoon feeds Google. This is their audience. This is what they love. This is what they do. Right. It's all right there. You know what I mean? And so because you have to know that the biggest players in marketing, are all sort of symbiotic. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you want to make sure that if you play by the rules, you play by the best practices, the people that play best often get rewarded the most.
Gotcha. So the next question is like, what do I post? Like, what do you recommend? Is there like a progression of what I post? Because like my biggest fear about social media is putting up something that's, misinterpreted or, not accurate or that's my biggest fear. So what do you recommend there?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that thought leaders are going to do is that they're not going to just constantly talk about themselves and their own brand, because you don't want to do that to death. We developed something that we call an 80-20. And an
Okay.
80/20 essentially is set up so that you talk about 80% about the industry, what's going on. As a thought leader, they expect you to know what's going on in your industry.
Sure.
And then about 20%, you talk about you, your products, your services, your company, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Um,
So you don't, I think that a lot of people get intimidated that they have to write some Shakespearean
yeah. Yeah,
piece
exactly. Yeah.
every
Or
single
make
time you
themselves
post.
look really smart. Yeah.
Yep. I also think that the more you can humanize, the more you can
Okay.
be charming, you know, that's going to be really
Okay.
important.
Yeah, that's not hard for you. So let me ask you something else. What what about like videos, images? Like,
Yep.
what's that like?
Yeah.
From a best practices perspective.
Well, anytime you can add visual elements, that's what you want to do.
Gotcha.
Obviously you can do text only. I wouldn't do text if I can do a picture with text on it, because pictures are
Okay.
going to gravitate more. Video, I say in the blog, and I think this is a low estimate. I've heard as high
Yeah.
as 12 times, but I'm seeing
Yeah.
that, people engage with video about 5 times more.
Okay.
And I think that if I put video on my webpage,
Hmm.
I think that it's going to keep people on the page longer. When they keep you on the page longer, that's one
Gotcha.
of the SEO ranking factors. I can't
Sure.
prove this, but I'm pretty confident that LinkedIn is always looking for the psychological triggers, and that the longer you stay on a specific LinkedIn profile, or a LinkedIn business page, I think
Hmm.
they reward that, but I can't
Gotcha.
prove it.